So in your guys' story, we're here to unpack the impact on our physical relationship as a couple when brokenness comes in, but also, the physical side of as we age, there are physical challenges we face. But first, let's kind of lean into the reality that when an addiction surfaces or when someone's, problematic struggle with unwanted behavior comes to light and there's betrayal, that impacts the sexual relationship a couple can have. And so what are some of the ways that our sex changes or the way that we relate to one another sexually changes after a disclosure or when there's a pattern of betrayal happening in the marriage?
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish between a full disclosure and staggered disclosure. And staggered disclosure is what most people experience, of where there's bits and snippets of discovery and the confession, but not confessing the whole thing, or the guy acting out and then feeling so much shame over that then he has to tell his wife, promises he'll never do it again. And that can be very traumatic for the spouse and make her feel very unsafe. And so that translates into the sexual relationship, because really the woman's ability to be present in that, which is a very vulnerable, is probably the most vulnerable we'll ever be, is in the sexual union, is predicated on her safety. And if she's not feeling safe about the relationship because he's constantly betraying her with these, what he may deem small indiscretions with looking at pornography or masturbation, or not turning to her for intimacy, then that's definitely going to cascade and affect her ability to be present in the bedroom. And then he's going to sense that too, and maybe feel rejected in those moments because she's not fully engaged. But the reason why she's not fully engaged is because he hasn't been fully engaged outside the bedroom with her. And a lot of these acting out behaviors are really centered around isolating and not being emotionally present. And Dr. Ted says all the time, this is not about sex, this is about intimacy, right? This is an intimacy disorder, and what we turn to for artificial intimacy and comfort, when really we need to be turning towards our spouse and other healthy relationships.
I mean, for me, I think the repeated disclosures, partial disclosures, staggered disclosures, really affected me a lot in terms of my self-esteem and self-image. And those weren't new. Those weren't caused by Brent. They had pre-existed him. I'd always struggled with kind of like my body shape and everything, but it definitely made it worse. I mean, I can't compete with these airbrushed perfect people that he was looking at on the screen. So so that really aggravated my issues with body image and self-image. Early on, though, I think, again, like I said, it was somewhat normalized in my family. And so it'd be like, well, okay, I forgive you, because that's what you're supposed to say when people say they're sorry. And then we'd kind of just move on like nothing had happened, which didn't really help. And so, again, as this progressed, we just lost all emotional intimacy. I kind of got to the point where I was like, yeah, you're going to say you're sorry. Fine, come say you're sorry. It's going to be, wash, rinse, repeat. It's going to be the same thing over and over again, because I'm not really seeing anything changing. I know a lot of couples actually stop having sex after there's a discovery or disclosure. We were a little different that way. We didn't stop. Part of that was, again, I think, because I just felt like I had this obligation, if you will, to still show up, even though it was, emotionally painful every time. But generally,
also concerned that if you didn't show up, that would heighten my triggers.
Yeah. So yes, there was that, and thank you for bringing that up. But generally, whenever we were in the bedroom together, I was physically present, but I definitely was not emotionally present, and sometimes very dissociated from it, just kind of off in my own mind, just waiting for everything to be done.
Yeah. And so I did full disclosure twice. because the first time wasn't good enough, but I did it.
Let's do it again.
Yeah. Well, I did it at the end of my first group in 2014, and
Yeah.
you just get up to Pillar 7, Lesson 1, and you do it, and there's not really much guidance. What does this look like, or what's the right way to do it? And so that was a page and a half handwritten. And then going into counseling with Ted and Diane, Rodney Wright was actually speaking at a Peer Desire Summit, and he talked about how impactful the emotional impact letter was during the disclosure process for him, and his ability to maintain sobriety and understanding his wife's pain. And I said, well, we never did that.
Yeah.
So I brought it up with Dr. Ted, and he took us back through that process in its entirety. And now being on the other side of that and leading couples through this, I can't speak highly enough about Peer Desire's full disclosure process of it's a multi-step process with the addict reading the full disclosure statement, which is basically to bring everything into the light, keep nothing hidden. And then the betrayed spouse's response and the emotional impact letter. So in her response to what he has told her, but also how his behaviors have affected her in multiple domains around her feelings of safety, in her physical being, her emotional or psychological health, the family's health, the financial health, all these different domains. And then as he's hearing this, to be able to internalize that pain that he has caused through his behaviors, what I find is that it is a very strong catalyst for change for him, and a motivation to continue in his recovery work of not wanting to put his wife through that again. And then also maybe the first opportunity that she's ever had to be able to voice that in a environment that's safe, and to show the depth of how that's affected her. And then his emotional restitution letter, which is his response to acknowledge her pain and commitment to go forward. But back to your question, Nick, that is a very healing process. It's not like it's not going to solve all the intimacy issues, but it's going to lay the foundation to allow the couple to move forward at that point.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very necessary step as we look at intimacy in the bedroom, that not going through that process, I don't think you can fully restore healthy intimacy in the bedroom until you've gone through that.